Open your Bibles, please, to Isaiah chapter 17. As Al mentioned, Vladimir Putin was able to broker a deal this past week regarding with Russia and Syria, possibly with Syria, regarding Syria's chemical weapons. So World War III has apparently been averted, perhaps, at least for now. So now the talk of the town in Washington, D.C. is back on the budget and the debt ceiling, and will Congress defund Obamacare or will they not? And the big question today on all the media outlets is, should Congress defund Obamacare? And I say, what a stupid question. What a stupid question. My response, however, actually is I don't care what Congress does. I defunded Obamacare 20 years ago. And everything else that wicked Congress has done for the last 20 years. So I've already defunded Obamacare, and I'm not going to participate in Obamacare in any way, shape, or form. But back to the world scene into Syria. Obama's apparent plan, I guess, to bomb Syria was foiled by several factors. Opposition from the public. I mean, everybody was against it. He knew that. Congress was opposed to it. Russia was opposed to it. So he backed down, and I think he's somewhat rather ashamed by the whole event. And fine, I don't care if he's ashamed or not. He should be ashamed. And Putin had warned that an American attack on Syria could lead to an expanded warfare beyond Syria's borders, and that was kind of threatening. He did say that if we attacked Syria, they would respond and they would defend Syria. And so I'm sure that had something to do with it. But because of this recent drama in recent weeks, there's been a lot of talk on the internet and etc. about Isaiah 17 and about how this possibly is about to be fulfilled. Isaiah 17 verse 1 says, "The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap." I just want first to comment a little bit about this whole situation over here in Syria. Turn over to Amos chapter 1. Keep your finger here in Isaiah 17 and turn over to Amos chapter 1, 6 books to the right. Based on this prophecy in Isaiah 17 about Damascus, many Christians actually believe that an attack on Damascus must occur before Christ can come, because they believe that this prophecy in Isaiah 17 has never been fulfilled. That Damascus was taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. It's the oldest city on the face of the earth. And there are many who believe that this prophecy has never been fulfilled, and therefore it must be fulfilled before Christ can come. Many actually were hoping that we would actually, destroy the city so that Christ could come back. I mean, there were people actually, hoping that would happen. And I had a guy comment about that to me. But I want to say today that though such an event may well happen, I do not believe that Damascus has to be nuked or even destroyed before Christ can come. I don't believe that. I believe that Damascus as the capital of modern day Syria, and actually of ancient Syria as well, is one of the oldest cities on the face of the earth. That's true. Has existed since the time of Abraham, the patriarch Abraham. Abraham said in Genesis 15 verse 2, he complained to God that he didn't have any heir except for this Eliezer of Damascus. And it's an old city from Abraham's time. But contrary to popular belief, Damascus has not been untouched for the past 4,000 years by war. It has been, in fact, destroyed before. It's quite possible, I believe, that Isaiah 17 has already been fulfilled. Here in Amos chapter 1, verse 1, we see the words of Amos, who was among the herdmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah. We're going to be talking about Uzziah later on, king of Judah. And in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, "The Lord will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. And the habitations of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the plain of Aven, and him that holdeth the scepter," that's the king, "from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith the Lord. I think it's quite possible that these two prophecies, the one in Isaiah 17 and this one here in Amos chapter 1, are of the same event. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, Isaiah and Amos were contemporaries. They lived about the same time. Actually, Amos prophesied a little bit before Isaiah. So it's quite possible, since they were contemporaries, they were given prophecies of the same event. Turn to 2 Kings chapter 16, please. 2 Kings chapter 16, we see that this prophecy of Amos was fulfilled to the letter. 2 Kings chapter 16, which of course is the history of the kings both of Judah and of the northern tribes of Israel. And in 2 Kings chapter 16, when you get there, I'll start reading. Sounds like most of you are all there. Verse 1, in the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. And he, by the way, was an evil king. He was a wicked king. 20 years old was Ahaz when he began to reign. Reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and did not that which was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like David his father. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and made his sons to pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. Ahaz, by the way, was one of the worst kings of Judah. It's interesting that he was such a wicked king, despite the fact that his son, by the way, was one of the best kings of Israel. His son Hezekiah. And he had a real heart for the Lord. Hezekiah had turned to the Lord with all of his heart, and there was a great revival in the days of Hezekiah, Ahaz's son. So, by the way, that does illustrate a principle that when Jesus said that a bad tree can't produce good fruit, that doesn't apply to your children. It doesn't apply to your children. A bad man can't produce children that turn out good. So there's good news for some of you. There's hope for some of you guys and your children. Your kids may turn out good in spite of you. Verse 5, then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, and could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria, and drove the Jews from Elath. And the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am thy servant and thy son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Syria, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, which rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord. By the way, Ahaz didn't call upon the Lord for deliverance. He took the treasures out of the house of the Lord to pay off this wicked king of Assyria to help him. He took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent it for a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria hearkened unto him. For the king of Assyria went up against Damascus, and took it, and carried the people of it captive to Kir, and slew Rezin. Fulfilling, by the way, to the letter, the prophecy of Amos, where he said, I'll break the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the plain of Aven, and him that holdeth the scepter, that's the king, from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity into Kir. So that was prophesied, even by the name of the city was prophesied that he would take them off too. Kir, by the way, was a city in what is now southeastern Iraq. A little information about Kir. It was a Mesopotamian city east of the lower Tigris River, which is now identified, by the way, with modern Badra in Iraq. The main road from Elam in Persia to Babylon. During the Neo-Babylonian period, Kir was the capital of the province of Gadium, and the governor of this province joined Cyrus the Persian in the overthrow of the Babylonian Empire. So it was a fairly important city back in those days. But now, by the way, note for a minute what follows this story. In verse 10 and 11, we're going to come back to this in a minute. King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus. King Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the fashion of the altar and the pattern of it. He drew a picture of it and sent it back down to Jerusalem. He apparently stayed up there in Damascus for a while and drew a picture of this altar and sent it down to Urijah the priest in Jerusalem. And so verse 11 says, Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that the king Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Urijah the priest made it against King Ahaz came from Damascus. The word, to clarify, that word against actually, it's a Hebrew word ad. It has several meanings. Here it means before and in preparation for. So that means that Uriah built this altar before he came back. I've got an important point on this altar I'll come back to in a moment. But the main point here from verse 9 is that Damascus was somewhat destroyed when the king of Assyria carried away all the people captive and he killed the king. In Gill's commentary, he mentions that at this time the walls of the city were demolished, its houses were pulled down, and that this was done, of course, by Tilgath-Pileser, one of the most powerful of the kings of Assyria. So their practice was to destroy a city when they carried the people away. So Damascus was destroyed at one point in history. Has been destroyed, probably twice actually. After its destruction by Tilgath-Pileser, here in this instance, the city was rebuilt, and it was somewhat destroyed again by Nebuchadnezzar later on, as Jeremiah prophesied of. In Jeremiah 49, this is what Jeremiah says in chapter 49, verse 24. Damascus is waxed feeble, and turneth herself to flee, and fear hath seized on her. Anguish and sorrow have taken her as a woman in travail. By the way, this is after these events, somewhat after. How is the city of praise not left, the city of my joy? Therefore her young men shall fall in the streets, and all the men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. And so that probably happened twice to Damascus, at least, if not more, that we don't know about. So the point is that Isaiah's prophecy could well have been already fulfilled. Now, it doesn't have to be fulfilled for Christ to return. It may still happen, however. Back to Isaiah 17. Isaiah 17, I'm going to read verse 1 through 8, because there's parts of that prophecy there that lead us to think that perhaps this could happen again. I don't think it has to, but here in Isaiah 17, the burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aurora are forsaken. They shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim. In other words, by the way, that means northern Israel will be carried away captive as well. Ephraim's northern Israel. They'll be carried away captive, which did take place, by the way, during Hezekiah's days and during the reign of Ahaz. So the fortress shall cease from Ephraim. They'll be carried away. And the kingdoms from Damascus and the remnant of Syria, they shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. And in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. And it shall be as when the harvestman gathereth the corn, and reapeth the ears with his arm. And it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Rephaim. In other words, there's going to be some left. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it. There'll be some of the people left. As the shaking of an olive tree. 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough. 4 or 5 in the outmost branches thereof. Outmost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God of Israel. At that day shall a man look to his Maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. In verse 8, and he shall not look to the altars. He shall not look to the altars. You see that? The work of his hands. Neither shall respect that which his fingers have made, either the groves or the images. That may well be a reference to what Ahaz did at the first destruction of Damascus. The Lord may be saying, this time, they're not going to look to the altars of Damascus and go build one in Jerusalem. So it may well happen again. It's possible. But what I'm saying here today is we don't need to think that Damascus has to be nuked before Christ can come back. And definitely we don't need to be hoping that happens and rooting for Obama to do that, like John Hagee down here. We don't need to be rooting for this to happen. All right? It doesn't have to happen. But that's enough said on that issue. My message for today is about Uzziah. I want to turn back to Isaiah chapter 1. We'll talk about King Uzziah. That was just some commentary on current events. Isaiah chapter 1.